The flight to D.C. was routine, except for the quiet, bearded man in 12A wearing a tactical cap. Suddenly, the pilot announced a security escort, 2 F-35 fighter jets. While passengers pressed against windows to snap photos, the man calmly dialed a number. Seconds later, the lead pilot's voice crackled over the frequency. "Iron Fist, is that you?" The passenger smiled faintly. "Affirmative. Just heading to D.C., boys." A stunned pause followed. Holy shit. It's really him. The squadron realized they weren't just escorting a plane. They were escorting the most decorated SEAL of the Iraq War. Where are you watching this story from? Let us know in the comments. If this journey of valor touched you, consider subscribing to Silent Veterans and help us give a voice to more incredible stories of our silent veterans. United Airlines Flight 237, cruising at 35,000 feet over Arizona. The Boeing 737 cut through thin air at 550 miles per hour, making the 5-hour journey from San Diego International Airport to Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Inside, 147 passengers settled into modern air travel's monotony, scrolling phones, watching seatback screens, reading, or staring out windows at endless clouds below. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon in late September. The sun blazed through starboard windows, casting golden light across rows of blue fabric seats. The cabin smelled of recycled air, coffee from beverage service, and the faint chemical scent of jet fuel that always permeated commercial aircraft. In seat 12A, a window seat in economy, row 12 on the left side, sat Commander Michael Iron Fist Carver. Michael was 43 years old, though the lines around his eyes and gray in his thick beard made him look older. He was built like a middleweight fighter, 6 feet tall, 195 pounds of lean, functional muscle from years carrying heavy gear through hostile territory. His dark brown hair was cut short beneath a tan tactical cap with a subdued American flag patch. He wore a dark gray Under Armour shirt with a black American flag on the left sleeve, faded jeans, and well-worn Salomon tactical boots. His forearms, visible below rolled-up sleeves, were covered in intricate tattoos, military unit insignias, coordinates, dates, and a trident on his right forearm marking him as a Navy SEAL. But to passengers around him, he was just another guy. Maybe former military. The bearing, build, and haircut gave that away, but nothing special. Just another veteran on a flight home. Michael stared out the window at Arizona desert 35,000 feet below, his expression distant. He wasn't seeing Arizona. He was seeing Ramadi, Fallujah, Mosul, places where he'd spent years, lost brothers, done things that still woke him at 3 a.m. in cold sweats. He'd been medically retired from the Navy SEALs 8 months ago after taking shrapnel in his left leg during a classified Syria operation. Surgeons saved the leg, but his days as an operator were over. No more breaching doors, no more direct action missions, no more leading men into the breach. Now he flew commercial to Washington, D.C. for a Pentagon ceremony, some award he didn't want, for an operation he couldn't talk about, in front of people who'd never understand what it cost. He'd rather be invisible. In the seat beside him, 12B, the middle seat, sat a nervous businessman in his 50s, typing frantically on a laptop, occasionally glancing at Michael with the discomfort people feel when sitting next to someone who looks dangerous. In 12C, the aisle seat, sat a young woman in her 20s, earbuds in, watching a movie on her iPad, completely oblivious. Michael preferred it that way. Anonymous, forgotten. Just another passenger. The flight attendant, a friendly woman in her 40s named Linda, came by with the beverage cart. "Can I get you anything, sir?" "Coffee, black. Thank you." "Of course." She poured, handed him a small plastic cup. "Heading to D.C. For business or pleasure?" "Business," Michael said simply, his tone polite but final, signaling he didn't want conversation. Linda got the message and moved on. Michael sipped his coffee and returned his gaze to the window. The Arizona desert stretched endlessly below. Red rock, sparse vegetation, the occasional highway cutting through wasteland. Beautiful in its harsh way. His phone buzzed. A text from Captain Jake Morrison, his former team leader and closest friend. You on the flight? Pentagon ceremony is at 1800 tomorrow. Don't be late, and don't skip it. Admiral's orders. Michael typed back, I'm on it. Relax. Jake's response. You better be. You earned this, brother. Let them honor you. Michael didn't respond. He pocketed the phone and closed his eyes, trying to sleep, trying to quiet the noise in his head. That's when the pilot's voice came over the intercom. The escort. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez from the flight deck. The cabin quieted. Passengers looked up from phones and tablets. Something in the pilot's tone, calm but carrying tension, commanded attention. We've just been informed by air traffic control that we're being escorted by 2 United States Air Force F-35 fighter jets as part of a routine security protocol. This is standard procedure and there is no cause for alarm. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened. We'll provide updates as necessary. The intercom clicked off. For a moment, silence, then chaos erupted. Fighter jets? Why? Someone shouted. Is there a threat? A woman asked, voice high with panic. Are we being hijacked? Another passenger said, pulling out her phone. Passengers flooded toward windows, pressing faces against small oval panes, phones out, trying to get pictures. Michael stayed seated but turned to look out his window. And there they were. 2 F-35A Lightning II fighters, the most advanced stealth multi-role fighters in the U.S. military, flying in formation off the port side, maybe 100 yards away. Their angular, predatory shapes cut through air with precision, gray camouflage making them look like sci-fi movie props. Afternoon sun glinted off canopies. Even from this distance, Michael could see pilots in helmets, heads turning slightly as they monitored the airliner. Michael's trained eye cataloged everything. USAF markings, external fuel tanks, no visible weapons, but he knew they carried AIM-120 AMRAAMs and AIM-9 Sidewinders internally. This wasn't training. This was a live intercept. Holy shit, the businessman beside him whispered, craning his neck to see. Why are fighter jets escorting us? Michael didn't answer. His mind ran through possibilities. Security protocol could mean anything. Suspicious activity, credible threat, or someone important on board. Or maybe. Michael pulled out his phone and opened a secure messaging app, one only military personnel with proper clearances could access. He scrolled through contacts and found Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen, an Air Force officer he'd worked with on joint operations in Afghanistan. She was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, not far from where they were flying. He typed, Sarah, you know anything about F-35s escorting United 237 out of San Diego? Response came in seconds. Holy shit, Mike, that's your flight. Yeah, I just got the alert. Stand by. Michael waited, expression calm but mind racing. Around him, passengers were losing composure, some crying, some filming, some demanding answers from flight attendants who clearly had no more information. Linda tried calming people. Everyone, please return to seats. The captain said this is routine. There's no danger. Routine? A man shouted. Fighter jets aren't routine. Michael's phone buzzed. Sarah again. Mike, I just talked to the squadron. They were scrambled because of a VIP security protocol. Someone on your flight is flagged as high value. They're not saying who, Andy, but... Mike, are you traveling under your real name? Michael typed, yes. Why? Because your name is flagged in every military database as Iron Fist. If ATC ran the passenger manifest and saw your name, Mike, they might have scrambled those fighters for you. Michael stared at the message. That didn't make sense. He was retired. Nobody now. Why would... His phone rang. Not the civilian line. The encrypted military line he'd kept active for emergencies. He answered. Carver. The voice was clipped, professional, carrying the unmistakable tone of a fighter pilot. Commander Carver, this is Lieutenant Colonel Brad Viper Hayes, 422nd Test and Evaluation Squadron, Nellis Air Force Base. I'm the lead pilot in your escort. Can you confirm identity? Michael glanced around. The businessman was staring at him now, eyes wide. The young woman in the aisle had taken out her earbuds, listening. Michael kept his voice low. "This is Commander Michael Carver, SEAL Team 3, retired. Confirm." A pause. Then, "Iron Fist?" "Affirm." Another pause. Longer. Then Michael heard controlled awe in the pilot's voice. "Holy shit. Sir, it's an honor. We weren't told you were on this flight. We were just told to escort a commercial aircraft. But if you're on board, sir, this changes things." "Changes what?" Michael asked. "Sir, every pilot in this squadron knows who you are. You're a legend. Battle of Ramadi. Operation Neptune Spear. The Mosul Op in 2016. We study your tactics at weapons school. Your required reading." Michael's jaw tightened. "I'm just a passenger, Colonel, heading to D.C. for a ceremony I didn't ask for." "Understood, sir, but—" "Cersei, can I ask something?" "Go ahead." "The ceremony tomorrow. Is it for the Syria Op? The one where you held a position for 6 hours against 200 hostiles so the assault force could extract?" Michael didn't answer immediately. That operation was still classified. Mostly. "I can't discuss that, Colonel." "Understood, sir. But, just so you know, word gets around. We know what you did. And we wanted you to know. You've got the entire 422nd escorting you the rest of the way to D.C. Not just 2 birds. We're calling in the whole squadron." Michael's eyes widened. "That's not necessary. Sir, with all due respect, you don't get to decide that. You're Iron Fist. You're a living legend, and we're damn well going to make sure you get to that ceremony safely." Before Michael could respond, he heard a sound outside. He turned. 4 more F-35s had joined the formation, 2 on each side of the airliner, flying in perfect precision. Passengers who'd been freaking out moments ago were now silent, staring in awe at fighter jets surrounding them. Viper's voice came through again. "Iron Fist, you've got a 6-ship escort now. And sir, we just radioed ahead. By the time you reach D.C. airspace, you'll have a full honors flyby waiting. The Air Force doesn't forget its brothers." Michael sat in his seat, throat tight, eyes stinging. He'd spent 8 months trying to disappear, trying to be nobody, and now— "Thank you, Colonel," Michael said quietly. "No, sir. Thank you, for everything." The line clicked off. The businessman in 12B turned to Michael, face pale. Who are you?" Michael didn't answer. He just stared out the window at 6 fighter jets flying in perfect formation, honoring a man who'd given everything and asked for nothing. Linda approached row 12, eyes wide. "Sir, the captain just received a message from air traffic control. They said the escort is for you." Every head in the cabin turned toward Michael. He said nothing, but the young woman in 12C pulled out her phone and did a quick search. Her eyes went wide. She showed her screen to the businessman. It was a declassified military article. Commander Michael Iron Fist Carver, the SEAL who held Ramadi. The businessman's mouth fell open. You're Iron Fist?" Michael finally looked at him. "I'm just a guy trying to get to D.C. But word was already spreading through the cabin, phones out. Searches happening. Within minutes, half the passengers knew they were flying with a living legend. And outside the window, 6 F-35s continued their escort. A silent tribute to a warrior who'd never asked to be remembered. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted completely. What had been panic was now something else. Awe, curiosity, and a strange reverence. Passengers who'd been demanding answers were now craning their necks to see the man in seat 12A. Phones were out, not filming the fighter jets anymore, but discreetly pointing toward Michael. Michael felt the weight of every eye on him. This was exactly what he'd been trying to avoid for 8 months. He wasn't Iron Fist anymore. That man had died somewhere between Ramadi and Mosul, buried under the weight of decisions made, brothers lost, and missions that cost pieces of his soul he'd never get back. He was just Michael Carver now. Retired. Broken. Trying to figure out how to live in a world that didn't involve kicking down doors at 3 a.m. But the cabin didn't see Michael Carver. They saw Iron Fist, and they wanted answers. A man in his 60s, Bill Crawford, a retired Marine sergeant sitting 3 rows back in 15C, stood up and walked down the aisle. He was stocky, gray-haired, wearing a faded USMC polo shirt and a baseball cap with an eagle, globe, and anchor. His eyes were locked on Michael with an intensity that said he knew exactly who he was looking at. Bill stopped at row 12, his hand gripping the headrest of Michael's seat. "Commander Carver?" Michael looked up slowly. He recognized the look in the man's eyes, the look of someone who'd served, who understood what the uniform meant. "Yes." Bill's voice was thick with emotion. "Sergeant Bill Crawford, USMC, retired. I served in Desert Storm. I wanted to shake your hand, sir. What you did in Ramadi, what you did for all of us. It matters." Michael stood up. Not because he wanted to, but because respect demanded it. He extended his hand. Bill gripped it firmly, his eyes wet. "Thank you, Sergeant," Michael said quietly. "No, sir. Thank you. My grandson's in the Marines now. Second deployment to Syria. He's alive because guys like you taught us how to fight smart, how to bring our boys home." Michael nodded, his throat tight. "Your grandson's a good man. Tell him to stay safe." "I will, sir." Bill released his hand, stepped back, and rendered a salute. A formal, crisp salute in the middle of a commercial airliner cabin. Michael, by instinct and years of conditioning, returned it. The cabin watched in silence. Bill returned to his seat, his head high, but the floodgates had opened. A young man in his 20s, Ryan Mitchell, sitting in 14B, wearing a college hoodie, stood up next. "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but is it true? Are you really Iron Fist, the SEAL from Ramadi?" Michael sat back down, his jaw tight. "I served in Ramadi, yes." "Dude, you're a legend." Ryan's voice was louder than he intended, drawing more attention. "I wrote my senior thesis on the Battle of Ramadi at UCLA. You held a building for, what was it, 18 hours, while your team extracted wounded." "It was 16 hours, Michael corrected quietly. "And I wasn't alone. I had my brothers with me. But the report said you were the last man out. You stayed behind to provide cover fire while—" "The reports are classified," Michael interrupted, his tone firm but not harsh. "I can't discuss operational details." Ryan nodded quickly, sensing he'd overstepped. "Right. Sorry, sir. It's an honor to be on the same flight as you." Michael nodded, hoping that would end it. Ryan returned to his seat, but it didn't end. A woman in her 40s, Jennifer Hollis, sitting in 18F with her teenage son, approached next. "Commander Carver, I'm sorry to intrude, but my brother was in the Army. He served in Mosul in 2016. He said a SEAL team saved his unit when they were ambushed. He said the team leader's call sign was Iron Fist. Was that you?" Michael's hands tightened on the armrests. "Mosul. 2016. That operation, the one that had earned him a Navy Cross and cost him 2 teammates. Ma'am, I can't confirm specific operations." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "My brother came home because of you. He has 3 kids now. I needed you to know that. Thank you." She didn't wait for a response. She just turned and walked back to her seat, wiping her eyes. Michael stared at the seat back in front of him, his breathing controlled, his emotions locked down tight. This was why he hated recognition, because it brought everything back. Every face, every name, every brother who didn't make it home. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom again, cutting through the murmur of conversations. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. I've just received additional information from air traffic control regarding our fighter escort. It appears we have a very distinguished passenger on board. Commander Michael Carver, United States Navy SEALs. Retired. Commander Carver is a decorated war hero, and the fighter escort we're receiving is an honors detail arranged by the United States Air Force in recognition of his service." The cabin erupted in applause, spontaneous, thunderous applause that filled the pressurized tube and made Michael want to disappear through the floor. Captain Rodriguez continued, his voice warm. "Commander, on behalf of United Airlines and everyone on this flight, thank you for your service. It's an honor to have you aboard." More applause. Some passengers stood. A few whistled. Michael sat frozen in his seat, his face burning, his hands gripping the armrest so tight his knuckles were white. The businessman in 12B leaned over, his earlier discomfort replaced with genuine respect. "Sir, I had no idea. I'm sorry if I seemed rude earlier. It's an honor." "You weren't rude," Michael said quietly, "and I'm just trying to get to D.C. for the ceremony tomorrow." Michael glanced at him. "How do you know about that?" The businessman gestured at his laptop. "I work for the Department of Defense, contract analyst. The ceremony tomorrow is for the Syria OP, right? The one where you held a forward operating position against overwhelming enemy force to allow an extraction?" Michael didn't answer. "It's okay, sir, I'm cleared. I read the after-action report. What you did, it saved 43 American lives. Special forces, CIA, contractors. They'd all be dead if you hadn't held that position." Michael's voice was barely audible. "2 of my teammates didn't make it out. Don't call me a hero." The businessman went quiet, understanding he'd touched a wound that wouldn't heal. Michael's encrypted phone buzzed again. He answered. "Commander Carver, this is Captain Rodriguez from the flight deck. Sir, I have Lieutenant Colonel Hayes on the radio. He's requesting permission to speak with you over the cabin PA system. Is that acceptable?" Michael closed his eyes. He wanted to say no. Wanted to tell them to leave him alone. But he knew how this worked. The machine had started moving. There was no stopping it now. "Fine," he said. "Thank you, sir." Patching him through now. A moment later, Viper's voice filled the cabin through the intercom speakers, crisp, professional, but carrying an edge of emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Colonel Brad Hayes, United States Air Force, flying off your port side. I want to take a moment to explain why we're here." Every passenger was listening now. The cabin was silent except for the hum of the engines and Viper's voice. "The man sitting in seat 12A, Commander Michael Carver, is one of the most decorated Navy SEALs in the history of our military. He served our nation for 22 years. He's completed over 300 combat missions across Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and other locations I'm not authorized to discuss. He's earned 2 Navy Crosses, 5 Silver Stars, 3 Bronze Stars with Valor, and a Purple Heart with 3 oak leaf clusters." Viper paused, letting that sink in. "But more than that, Commander Carver represents something we in the military hold sacred: selfless service. In 2006, during the Battle of Ramadi, he held a building under siege for 16 hours, allowing his teammates to evacuate wounded. He was shot 3 times. He kept fighting. In 2016 in Mosul, he led a rescue operation that saved 32 Iraqi civilians and 5 American soldiers. He carried a wounded child through a mile of hostile territory under fire. Michael's jaw clenched. He didn't want this. Didn't want the spotlight. Didn't want people to know. "And earlier this year," Viper continued, "in an operation that's still mostly classified, Commander Carver held a defensive position against an enemy force that outnumbered him 20-1. He fought for 6 hours, alone, so that 43 Americans could get out alive. He was wounded. He lost teammates. But he completed the mission. The cabin was utterly silent. Several passengers were crying. That's why we're here," Viper said, his voice strong and clear. "Because men like Commander Carver are the reason the rest of us can sleep safely at night. Because his service, his sacrifice, and his courage deserve to be recognized. So on behalf of the 422nd Test and Evaluation Squadron and the entire United States Air Force, we salute you, Iron Fist. It's an honor to escort you home." The transmission ended. The cabin erupted in applause again, louder this time, sustained, emotional. Passengers stood. Some saluted. The retired Marine, Bill Crawford, stood at attention in the aisle, tears streaming down his weathered face. Michael sat in his seat, his head bowed, his eyes closed, fighting to keep his emotions in check. The young woman in 12C, who'd been silent this whole time, leaned over and whispered, "Thank you. My dad was Army. He died in Afghanistan in 2012. He always said guys like you were the reason he kept going. Thank you for bringing some of them home." Michael looked at her. She was maybe 24. Her eyes were red. She'd lost her father when she was probably 12 or 13. "I'm sorry about your dad," Michael said quietly. She nodded and turned away, wiping her eyes. Michael looked out the window. The 6 F-35s were still there, but now something else was joining them. 2 F-22 Raptors, the Air Force's premier air superiority fighters, slid into formation above the airliner, their twin tails gleaming in the afternoon sun. Then 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons joined from below. Within minutes, the United 737 was being escorted by 10 fighter aircraft, the largest peacetime escort of a commercial airliner in U.S. history. Michael's phone buzzed, a text from Jake Morrison. "Mike, what the hell did you do? I just got a call from SOCOM. They said you've got half the Air Force escorting you to D.C. You were supposed to keep a low profile, brother." Michael typed back, "Not my choice. They recognized the name." Jake's response, "Iron Fist doesn't get to be invisible. You earned this, Mike. Let them honor you." Michael stared at the message, then at the fighter jets outside his window, then at the cabin full of strangers who were looking at him like he was something more than he felt. He wasn't Iron Fist. Not anymore. But maybe that's not who he got to decide he was. The sun was setting over the Potomac River as United Flight 237 began its descent. The cabin was in reverent silence. Passengers who had been taking photos had returned to their seats, but their eyes kept drifting to the man in seat 12A, the legend who just wanted to be left alone. Michael stared out the window at the Virginia and Maryland landscape emerging below, the Chesapeake Bay, the dense forests, the sprawling suburbs, and finally, the iconic monuments of the Capitol. The Washington Monument rose like a white spear. The Capitol dome gleamed gold in the twilight. The 10-fighter escort maintained formation, their presence both beautiful and overwhelming. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed over the intercom for the final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our final approach into Reagan National. As you may have noticed, our fighter escort has remained with us throughout the entire flight. Air traffic control has informed us that we've been granted a special approach corridor, something that hasn't been done since Air Force One operations. Commander Carver, this is for you, sir." Michael closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. The 737 descended through 10,000 feet, then 5,000, its landing gear extending with a mechanical whir that vibrated through the airframe. The fighters adjusted their formation, spreading out to create a corridor, 5 on each side, forming a path of honor through the sky. As the airliner descended through the corridor, each fighter jet peeled off in sequence, executing a perfect missing man formation, a traditional aerial salute used to honor fallen warriors. But this time it wasn't for the dead. It was for the living legend who'd given everything and asked for nothing. Passengers pressed against windows, filming, crying, overwhelmed by the display of respect. The businessman in 12B had tears streaming down his face. "My God," he whispered, "I've never seen anything like this." Michael watched the fighters peel away one by one, their afterburners igniting briefly as they climbed back into the darkening sky, brilliant orange flames against the purple twilight. Each departure felt like a salute, a goodbye, an acknowledgement of something he couldn't quite name. The 737 touched down on runway 1 with a gentle bump. As it taxied toward the gate, Michael saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. Lined up along the taxiway were emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, airport security, but not for an emergency. Their lights were flashing in synchronized sequence, creating a path of red and blue strobes, and standing in front of each vehicle were firefighters, paramedics, and airport personnel, all at rigid attention, all saluting. This was a water salute, a tradition where fire trucks spray arcs of water over an aircraft to honor someone significant. But this was more. This was the entire airport honoring a warrior coming home. As the 737 passed between 2 massive fire trucks positioned on either side of the taxiway, they activated their water cannons simultaneously, sending twin arcs of water high over the fuselage, creating a shimmering tunnel that caught the last rays of sunset and fractured them into rainbows, brilliant streaks of color arcing through the mist. The cabin erupted in applause, not for the spectacle, for the man in 12A who hadn't asked for any of this, but had earned every moment of it. Captain Rodriguez's voice was thick with emotion. "Commander Carver, on behalf of United Airlines, the United States Air Force, and everyone who's had the honor of sharing this flight with you. Welcome home, sir. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And thank you for reminding us all what true heroism looks like. The 737 pulled up to gate 35. The jetway extended with a mechanical whir, but before the seatbelt sign turned off, Captain Rodriguez emerged from the cockpit. He walked directly to row 12. "Commander Carver," he said formally, "it's been an honor to have you on my flight, sir." Michael stood. "Thank you, Captain. You fly a good bird. Sir, there's someone waiting for you at the gate. Actually, several someones." Michael's stomach tightened. "Who?" Captain Rodriguez smiled faintly. "You'll see, sir." The seatbelt sign turned off. Passengers began gathering their belongings, but no one moved toward the exit. They were waiting, watching. Michael grabbed his small carry-on, a simple black duffel bag that contained everything he owned these days. He slung it over his shoulder and started toward the exit, his limp from the Syria injury barely noticeable but still there. As he passed each row, passengers stood, not to leave, to honor him. Some saluted. Some nodded with deep respect. Some just watched with tears streaming down their faces, unable to speak. Bill Crawford, the retired Marine, gripped Michael's shoulder. "Semper Fi, brother. You made us all proud today." "Semper Fi," Michael replied quietly. The young woman whose father had died in Afghanistan handed him a carefully folded piece of paper. "Sir, that's my dad's name and unit. If you ever have time, if you could visit his name on the memorial, it would mean everything to my family." Michael took the paper, his throat too tight to speak. He just nodded, tucking it carefully into his pocket. He reached the exit where Linda, the flight attendant, stood with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for your service, Commander." "Thank you for the coffee," Michael said, managing a small, genuine smile. He stepped into the jetway and stopped dead. The gate was packed, but not with random travelers. With military personnel, there were at least 75 of them, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Army, and dress uniforms, standing at attention in perfect formation. Sailors in their service dress blues with white caps, Marines in their dress blues with white belts, soldiers in their Army service uniforms with black berets. The formation was precise, disciplined, silent. At the front stood Rear Admiral Stephen Keller, 2 silver stars gleaming on his shoulders, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. Beside him stood Command Master Chief Daniel Wright, the senior enlisted SEAL in the Navy. Behind them, Michael saw faces he recognized. Teammates, brothers, men he'd served with, men he'd bled with. Jake Morrison stood in the front row, wearing his dress whites, grinning like an idiot with tears streaming freely down his face. Admiral Keller stepped forward. "Commander Carver, welcome home, sir." Michael came to attention automatically. "Admiral." Admiral Keller rendered a salute, sharp, crisp, perfect, held with unwavering precision. Every service member in that gate area followed suit in perfect unison, 75 hands snapping to foreheads simultaneously, creating a sound like a single crack of thunder, a sea of salutes. For him, Michael returned the salute, his hand trembling now, his composure finally cracking. Admiral Keller held his salute for a long moment before finally dropping his hand. He stepped closer, his voice low. "I know you didn't want this, Mike. I know you just wanted to fly commercial and slip into DC quietly. But that's not how this works. Not for you. You're Iron Fist. And Iron Fist doesn't come home in silence." He stepped back and addressed the formation, his voice carrying the command presence of a flag officer. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Commander Michael Carver. Call sign, Iron Fist. 2 Navy Crosses, 5 Silver Stars, 3 Bronze Stars with Valor. Purple Heart with 3 Oak Leaf Clusters. Over 300 combat missions across 2 decades of continuous warfare. And the living embodiment of what it means to be a Navy SEAL." The formation remained at attention, silent, disciplined. "Tomorrow," Admiral Keller continued, "Commander Carver will receive his 2nd Navy Cross for actions in Syria, an operation that saved 43 American lives at tremendous personal cost. But today, right now, We honor him not for what he did in one mission, but for what he's done across 22 years of service, for leading from the front, for never asking his men to do anything he wouldn't do first, for bringing his brothers home when everyone else said it was impossible. He turned back to Michael, his eyes bright. You tried to disappear, Mike. You tried to become invisible, but you don't get to. Because we won't let you. Because you matter. Because what you've done matters. And because we need you, not as an operator anymore, but as a leader, as a mentor, as living proof that the warrior ethos isn't dead. Michael's voice was rough, barely audible. Sir, I'm retired. I'm medically discharged. I'm nobody now. You're wrong, Command Master Chief Wright said, stepping forward. You're not nobody. You're one of us. You're a SEAL. And that doesn't end just because the uniform comes off. That doesn't end just because your body can't do what it used to. You're still a warrior. You're still a brother. And you always will be. Jake Morrison couldn't take it anymore. He broke formation, protocol be damned, and crossed the space between them in 3 long strides. He grabbed Michael in a crushing bear hug, not caring about rank or decorum. You stubborn son of a bitch, Jake said, his voice thick. You really thought we'd let you fly commercial without an honor guard? You really thought we'd forgotten about you? Michael laughed despite himself, the sound cracking with emotion. I should have known better. Damn right you should have, Jake said, stepping back but keeping his hands on Michael's shoulders. Now let's get you out of this airport. You've got a ceremony tomorrow morning. And this time, brother, you're going to stand on that stage and accept that medal with your head held high. No arguments. You're going to let this nation honor you. Understood? Michael nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. 6 months later, the classroom at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, was filled with 30 SEAL candidates. Young men fresh out of Bud's Hell Week, about to begin their advanced combat preparation. At the front of the room stood Commander Michael Carver, wearing khaki instructor's uniform, a trident on his chest, his bearings straight despite the limp he'd never fully lose. My name is Commander Michael Carver, he began, his voice steady and clear. You might know me as Iron Fist. I'm here to teach you what Buds doesn't. How to lead when everything goes wrong. How to make the impossible decisions. How to carry the weight when your brothers don't come home. And how to keep going when every part of you wants to quit. The candidates listened with the fierce intensity of young warriors who understood they were learning from a living legend. You're going to lose people, Michael continued, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned experience. You're going to make decisions that haunt you for the rest of your lives. You're going to lie awake at 3 a.m. asking yourself if you did enough, if you made the right call, if there was something, anything, you could have done differently. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy. And the answer is, you did enough. You did the best you could with the information you had. Because you showed up. You fought. You led. You made the hard calls, and you brought as many home as you possibly could. That's what being a SEAL means. He looked each candidate in the eye. It's not about being invincible. It's not about never being afraid. It's about being willing to stand when everyone else runs. It's about carrying the weight so your brothers don't have to. It's about accepting that the mission matters more than the man, even when that man is you. One of the candidates raised his hand. Sir, how do you deal with losing teammates? How do you keep going? Michael's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. You carry them with you. Every decision you make, you ask yourself, would this honor their sacrifice? Would this make them proud? And you keep going because they can't. Because they gave everything so that the mission could succeed. So that others could come home. And the best way to honor that is to live a life worthy of their sacrifice. He gestured to the trident on his chest. This isn't just a badge. It's a responsibility. It means you're part of something bigger than yourself. A brotherhood that spans generations. And when you earn this, you earn the right to serve alongside the best warriors this nation has ever produced. But you also accept the burden of carrying their legacy forward. The candidates nodded, understanding they were receiving something precious. Wisdom earned in blood, and paid for in brothers lost. Welcome to the teams, Michael said, his voice strong. Now let's get to work. And for the first time since his medical retirement, Commander Michael Iron Fist Carver felt like he'd finally come home. Not to a place, to a purpose.